Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to a new exciting LinkedIn session where we will address the influence of geopolitics on MDM and supply chain. It's Pio Marola here from ThinkLinkers, and I'm excited to welcome you all today. I'm in Yerevan today, the capital of Armenia, and the first question I would like to ask you is where are you connecting from? I'm very curious to see where are you coming from? How's it going there? We're beginning the fall season. Today, strangely, it's not sunny. Let me know if you're lucky and blessed and still have sun wherever you're coming from. So today we're going to have a guest that we had several times. We had the pleasure of having several times talking about innovative topics, master data management, and always bringing a tangible and concrete element to master data management, which is very important when you think about it, because see, whenever we're talking about master data or topics that tend to be dry, it's very important that we're able to give them a more tactile and tangible element that everyone else in the organization can understand. Because after all, what is master data for if it doesn't bring concrete results for whatever organization we're talking about? So I'm seeing here Natalia, of course, in Prague. We have Venkata, Toronto, Canada, USA, Ashish from Stockholm. Yes, Natalia, it's cloudy there as well. Well, get ready for 8 months of clouds there, because Prague is usually not very kind to its inhabitants when it comes to the weather. Atlanta again, Prakash as well. Welcome you all. It's a pleasure to have you here, as always. So, again, we're going to talk about the influence of geopolitics today. Now, do geopolitics influence MDM and supply chain? Absolutely. We are seeing it all the time nowadays, considering the confusing and shifting environment that we're living in. And we see how organizations need to maintain an agile, adaptive mentality in order to process the changes that are happening in the world in the best possible way. We also have Sabina, fantastic. Okay, there's a debate here about the weather in Prague. Well, ladies, it is what it is. Now, before calling on stage Brian Thompson, the CEO of Astocetia, well, let me tell you that it is a treat. Every time Brian talks about MDM, it's always a pleasure, and we had the pleasure of working with him several times. As a matter of fact, I believe it was 2021 since Brian became a staple for all of our event, whether digital or on-site. Brian always brought very interesting topics, and therefore buckle up. Brian is coming. Hi, Brian. How are you doing?
Good to see you.
Very good. Likewise. Always a pleasure.
The same weather here in Denmark, so not any better, unfortunately.
Yeah. So, you as I was mentioning before, we had many sessions together, but for those in the audience that don't know you yet, tell us something about yourself. In particular, I would like to ask you, what brought you to MDM and data management?
Oh, a long journey, I would say. I've been working with master data before I knew it was master data. Used to work with RFID industrial laundries all over the world. So, employee clothing for big manufacturing companies controlled by RFID, location management, employee management, to actually, invoicing the different types of clothing and washes that they had. So that was master data even before I knew it was multi-domain master data. Way back in 95, I think.
Ooh.
So not that I'm older or anything, but yeah.
Of course. Yeah, I think many of us stumbled upon master data before knowing it
Mm.
was master data before it was even called master data. I think in 1995 that wasn't the name, was it?
No, it was just a matter of what we tried and do back then was actually mimic the physical world, right? So you had locations, you had customers, you had products, you had services, all combined. So there was actually more of a a practical solution towards customer experience and invoicing towards certain customers that had hundreds of locations. Um, so yeah, it's been an interesting journey over the last 20 plus years. Um, so it's the good thing is that it's just as relevant today, having digital twins as of different locations, different countries, etc., with different legislation. So I think that was also due to a few talks in my network that geopolitics is just playing a bigger and bigger role in our today's society. We see it on the television, right? Or online streaming, wherever you get your news from, right?
Yeah.
So it's just becoming more and more complex, and that really had set some heavy demands for our master data setup as well in our organizations.
Yeah, let's get right into it. Um, where have you seen how? Let's talk about this influence, right? How does geopolitics really affect companies' master data and supply chain?
Well, I think everybody can remember when we had trouble in the Suez Canal, products not arriving on time. Um, there's been missiles in the Red Sea blocking sea transport. So suddenly, something that we expected to be on our shelves or in stores at a certain point suddenly wasn't. Um, so that's just one example of where things are just happening quickly, where we as organizations need to react extremely quick to have the overview and be able to react and reduce the risk that we have managing our products and services globally. The war as well, of course, in Ukraine and now today in Libya as well, right? So there's suddenly a lot of people and countries and products and services getting affected. Whether it's our employees that are getting affected by or our partners that are getting affected by it from a people perspective, or whether it's products or services or spare parts not arriving on time, so we cannot manufacture at the right point. Um, the
Yeah.
instability as well, as you know, with inflation, right? Suddenly, raw materials are costing a fortune, and it's not only raw materials; it could be energy as well. Energy costs we've seen, booming through the roof in multiple areas, whether it's electricity or natural gas or whatever. So suddenly we are being affected by multiple factors. Um,
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, we live in an increasingly complex world, and of course, considering how many pieces and parts are produced in many different parts of the world, it's just enough to have a problem in a specific country to see then the repercussion in all aspects of supply chain. And it is the world we live in. I mean, it is an undeniable fact, and companies need to adapt to this. So, how can MDM help mitigating these challenges, or how should MDM adapt to these challenges?
well, I think everybody has seen now that having good supplier master data, having good product master data, and location master data is simply not enough. It's the connectivity between your products, your spare parts, your bill of material, your services, your cost centers internally that has a massive impact, and it's simply in most cases completely disconnected. So you have no way of managing risk, and if you have no way of managing risk, you are losing money every day without even perhaps even knowing it. So it requires that we have a much more scalable and agile way of looking at master data, and stop looking at the silos and actually start looking at the data domains as a whole. Product is not separated from a supplier. It's not separated from a country. It's not separated by legislation or tariffs or customs fees. So we have to see it all in one, as I always say, with this big organism of master
Yeah.
data. The reason we had the name Master City, it's all around connectivity of the whole organism. And I think I've been preaching, the connectivity part for many years, but not to say that I was right, but it's definitely pointing out the necessity of having connected master data with the different domains, but also in the whole architecture, so that the
Yeah.
data is refreshed and connected in whatever systems you approach the data and look at it or maintain it.
Yeah, and I mean, we're hearing more and more about the importance of connectivity, the fact that data needs to talk to each other in order to bring the results that are needed. There are, of course, let's say, stoppers to this. There are concerns that come from either data governance or the simple fact that organizations tend to work into silos for a reason or another. So how can organizations kind of overcome these limiting beliefs regarding having a connected organism? What should they do?
Well, it starts up here in the mindset, and it starts with having engagement from the management and having engagement from senior directors that can see the business problem, but also the business outcome out of this. Because otherwise, you will never get the budget. You'll never get the understanding of why it's important. We can clean data. We can try and make it better, but everybody that's been working with reporting or controlling knows how insanely difficult it is to actually get some sense out of all the data that you have. And if you don't start cleaning that up and connecting it, you won't have any ability to do reporting. Or, as a matter of fact, if anything changes in this area, it'll affect 5 other areas, right? You don't have that connectivity. So it's having that cause and effect MDM mindset. If I change this, what happens in my channels? What happens with my pricing? If my raw materials goes up by 20%, right? What
Yeah.
does that do to my profit? What does that do to my customers? Which industries are being affected that we sell to? So it's not only your own world, it's actually also the industry you're selling into. It's the country you're selling into, or have services or are mutually dependent on raw materials or spare parts or whatever.
Yeah. And this connectivity is fundamental in order to create simulations of forecast,
Yeah,
like you
different
mentioned
scenarios.
before.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, right? We've been afraid of experimenting within MDM. People just expect that MDM is always the truth. Well, the truth is always historic, right? So you have to be able to actually cater for different scenarios, increasing energy costs, suppliers that go bust due to inflation, right? So suddenly you are in a bad place if you don't have alternative suppliers, or you don't have an ability to nearshore some of the products or the master data that you get from multiple vendors. So there's tons of trends at the same time, right? Going away from China, insourcing a bit closer to Europe is what we're seeing. The same with the US as well. The heavy dependency globally on that interconnectivity between different countries. A very uncertain political area currently. It's just a different ball game. You can be absolutely certain that nothing is certain, and you have to be able to navigate in that complex and ever-changing world. So for us, it's all around creating a flexible and transparent data model. Again, having a connected MDM layer that connects the different systems, the different data domains, and can actually create the relationships between them. So you have full transparency of no matter which data object you touch, whether it's a customer, an employee, a country, all the data objects that have to be connected. So that's what we work a lot with right now. So forget about product MDM, forget about customer MDM. It all has to go together.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, if we continue with the very separated and kind of silos way of looking at MDM, how do we get any benefits? The company will not have an overview and will not be able to make sense of the data unless it communicates, unless there is a connection between them, and there is a possibility, as we said, to play with different scenarios, experimenting. And by the way, about experimenting, that's such an important thing, because sometimes some of these unexpected black swan events, they're not based on anything that ever happened before, right?
No.
So we need all the data we can have in the most accessible and usable possible form in order then to generate a solution that is both based on the data, therefore on the history, and also on creativity. But we need the data to begin with, this initial layer. What do you think?
And as I said, that's why you need the mindset, because you can't create an alternative structure of your data and your data model if you're just doing what you're used to doing, right? So and that's again why we see the problem globally, whether it's retail, manufacturing, pharma. It affects all industries, and it affects it big time. So again, here we have the commercial hook. Everybody can agree. It affects your turnover. It affects your profit. So let's start there, right? So if we can dig all the way back to through the whole value chain and the whole supply chain, making sure that we have decoded what the different optics are, all the way from bill of material, ingredients, packaging even, right? So we're seeing, especially right now, food companies being forced to actually consider who's your most critical suppliers. Who do you have to 100% rely on if you have to produce food? Just one example. So we're working with a lot of different food groups around the world, and they're being forced to look at your packaging. Well, if you can't have electricity, how do you do your packaging? If you can't produce meat or vegan products, whatever you produce, what's the alternative? What can you produce? So, practical example, we have a client that they have to produce for 3 days, no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what if the cars run out of petrol or electricity, right? You have to cater for that. So we're not talking about only your production. We're talking about the whole supply chain. We're talking about the way you distribute to customers, what kind of services you provide. How are you going to do that in case X, Y, Z? And that's the scenarios that people are being demanded for to actually cater for now. So completely different thing. And if you can't have your data connected, how are you going to report on it? How are you going to, assess the risk of scenarios happening before they happen?
Yeah. You see, sometimes the problem is that companies realize this only when something happens.
Yeah.
Beforehand, everything is running, so why fixing it? Now, do you have any tips about, kind of the sales angle, what to tell to your organization about why they should embark into this journey for a more connected, flexible MDM model when things seem to be running okay? Do you have any tips?
A quick tip would actually to be asking the hard questions now before they happen. What happens if our energy costs rises with 30%? Do we know what kind of energy we use in our factories, in our offices, in our stores, etc., etc.? Do we know that? And the answer is probably hell no. We have no clue. And that is just one angle into one question. The other one is what happens if we break down in production? Do we have the spare parts we need to have our machinery up and running the next 3 months? Well, probably not. So it's those questions that you can kind of dig down. You don't have to ask more than 10 questions. Then I think you have more than enough in your plate. But it's just a good way of pressure testing whether you have control over your master data and who's going to deliver it.
Yeah.
And the trick is here, because this becomes kind of a gray zone between master data and transactional data, because typically your master data layer doesn't have pricing in it or is not governing the pricing. And especially when it comes to energy costs or tariffs or customs tariffs, etc. So there you have to be combining that with BI. You have to govern that together with your BI and transactional data. So again, but you can't, if you don't have anything to put your transactional data on top of a good solid MDM foundation, you don't have the right data. So it's a matter of show me the money, show me the cases where we can actually use master data for doing this. One example, we have a customer with more than 1,000 stores globally. We know exactly what kind of electricity they have, what kind of heating, what kind of water they have. So it's kind of a semi-facilities management where you can control exactly. So if they know exactly if the energy costs are rising, how much will that affect their profit per store globally for 1,000 stores? That's one example.
Yeah.
If you have raw materials and you can start to calculate, well, we had another client that was heavily dependent on wood for furniture manufacturing, right? Well, suddenly Russia invaded Ukraine. You don't want to do business with Russia now. Okay, you're buying all your wood from Russia. Where do you source it from then? Well, you might be able to source it from Europe, but it's probably 2 or 3 times more expensive. How much is that going to affect your final cost of production? How much is that going to affect your final pricing in front of the customer? Will that affect that they go low ball and then go into you know more cheap priced products? What's your competition then like? So
Yeah.
it's just small things that can have a massive ripple effect. But if you don't have dual sourcing set up in your MDM or transactional system, you don't have that ability. And that's what we try and push, have that transparency, having alternatives, experiment with different setups, different kinds of raw material. Luckily, ESG has been pushing a lot of the boundaries when it comes to packaging, for example. Can you reduce your packaging? Can you make it more sustainable, having more cardboard in your products instead of plastic? You know, so the trend is already happening. The problem is the master data is not, and that needs to change now.
Yeah. Actually, it's really good. You provided some very good tips, and I like the fact that you talked about business problems, business impact, because sometimes I see the need of master data is raised within organizations for the sake of master data, and it's articulated in a way that is too technical for
Yeah.
organizations to understand. Why do we need this? I don't even understand what you're talking about. Instead, it needs to be as tangible as possible, as connected to real use cases as possible, and with an impact that can be understood by the very business professionals and business executives of the organization. So excellent tips right there. On top of that, we you see, you suggest something like even if the even if it's good season, let's stock up for winter in case it happens. Let's have alternatives. Let's have a plan B, C, and D that still shouldn't be heavy on the company because we're talking of an agile setup. And therefore, take this approach, like be prepared for the unexpected, right?
Yeah. And that's why it comes back to change management again. If people don't realize how interdependent your master data is, then you don't get the leverage to do something about it, right?
Yeah.
So you have to paint the picture. And I think what we've just been through, right? We have the financial perspective. huge one. We have the risk perspective, another huge one. And we have the ownership. Because if people don't own it in procurement when they do strategic sourcing between different companies, different countries, we'll never get those, let's say, problem solution outcome. So we need to go into dialogue with them, and that's what we why we do what we do, because we have the ability to go in completely unfaded and untainted of internal politics and whatever. We just know what we need to do to make it work. And
Yeah.
I think that is the, yeah, again, blessing in disguise, having somebody external sometimes coming in, because internally, that, guys, it's it's just an uphill battle. We've all fought before. So you need to accelerate it, because if you don't accelerate now, you'll be overtaken by reality very soon, if not.
Have you encountered the challenge, this uphill battle yourself? Do you have the experience in that?
Well, absolutely. And it's a constant challenge. So I'm not saying we can always solve it like a magic bullet, right? But it's all around confidence. It is showing the cases, and that's where we have the benefit from 50 odd cases throughout the world. We can show it works, and we can show it works globally. So that's the benefit, I think. And even us, we have to convince and convince and convince, repeat, and angle it in a different way, because otherwise, as you say, it becomes boring, and people just get tired of hearing the same song over and over and again. So you have to be able to play the same song, but do it in a heavy metal fashion, pop fashion, and jazz fashion, right? So you get, always refreshed, and get the statements from people internally instead. So it's not you doing the battle; it's actually you being backed by supported, and from supply chain, from strategic procurement, sourcing, selling, etc. Get them to speak for you instead of you trying to do all the battles. You can do it, but then you'll go tired of running that uphill battle very soon.
Yeah, and I think eventually it's important that the data management team, as well as the overall organization, takes ownership of the initiative, right? And eventually they're able to articulate all what we talked about themselves. But I fully agree with you that having from time to time an external that comes in with a fresh perspective, without any, in a way also without any fear of repercussions,
Yeah, exactly.
because
Yep.
sometimes
Yep.
if you're stuck in a certain role for 10 years, there are certain cultural aspects that of the company and certain things that already influenced you to the point that you don't really feel like raising your hand and shaking up everything. So having an external that comes in and does this and initiates the change makes a lot of sense to me.
And I think especially for the acceleration, right? You can try and do your internal battles, but it can. I've seen companies trying for 5 to 10 years, just getting one domain in place, right?
Yeah.
So, and if that is the speed, right, it's hopeless. So I think it's around also the courage of reaching out and actually saying, guys, it's so big. ESG is a good example, right? Another big topic that where you do need external help. Who the hell has worked with ESG before? Well, in some perspectives, maybe, but it's a big topic, and you need somebody that has done it before. You need somebody that has the cases to show it, and can accelerate also the implementation of better processes, better understanding, and better data models. And unfortunately, also from an IT perspective, the whole IT infrastructure and architecture that needs to support that. You need to make sure you have all the systems integrated so you don't do double work, but can actually make it easy and more transparent in what you do. But that's the
Yeah.
whole point of agility.
Exactly. Exactly. We have a comment here: to be able to react to external factors that have direct impact on profitability and or operations. The integrated data landscape is a must. Very good use case to sell data to executives.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
absolutely.
Let's talk about some use cases now. Let's talk about, because you've been talking and evangelizing this position about um, a more agile and adaptive, connected approach to MDM and supply chain. Let's talk about some client cases where, by following this approach to MDM, the client managed to achieve significant cost saving or improve profitability. Do you have any cases such as this?
Well, luckily we have many, and we measure in different areas. We measure in profitability, of course, but we also measure in time saving. We
Yeah,
measure in the almost confidence. How can you make sure to have confidence in your data? What is that worth? It's very hard to know to put a price tag on, but um, so there's many ways of measuring success and profitability. So we try to start with the beginning, always the customer.
yeah,
If you can provide better quality, better transparency to the customer, they're the ones paying your bills. They are the ones buying your services or your products, right? So that's where the profit lies. And of course, if you can go cheaper to market, you can have a more competitive edge by knowing your costs, knowing your opportunities. Because the thing is, if you don't drive BI and market intelligence, customer intelligence out of your master data, then you don't know where you are. And if you don't know where you are, how the hell are you going to know which direction to go? Right. So that
yeah.
is also something that is value that even dusty old companies can actually be more agile um, by having this approach to master data and the way they approach their customers. But for many of our customers, it's almost unfathomable to have that whole value chain in mind. We know procurement, we know our bill of material, great, but who buys it?
Yeah.
Right? So how can we optimize so we don't buy stuff we don't need or the customers don't need? We don't do services that is going down. We need to have services that are going up. We need to bundle in a different way. So it's a matter of thinking solutions and a way of servicing your industries and your clients in a different way. Your customers know what they need, so why not talk to them? And if you know what they need, you have your whole roadmap ahead of you. And that is I would say, our biggest sort of focus area right now is to make sure we can actually talk to the customers,
Mm,
because otherwise we can suggest something that is not in line what the customer and the market needs, right?
mm.
So, and if you have the customer under control, you've reduced your risk, you've increased your profit, and you've increased your productivity. So
Absolutely.
I had an excellent meeting with an ex CFO a couple of months back. He said if you can increase the customer value and at the same time reduce complexity, this is your profit. This is the value of the company, and translate that straight to master data, right? And I think this is nailing it completely. What we do, reducing complexity and adding customer value, then you're in the market forever.
Excellent. I agree with you 100%. And among the other things that we mentioned, like the trust, the customer centricity, the agility, there is also another very important aspect: resilience,
Yeah, absolutely.
which is so important today. You need to
It is.
react, and you need to be resilient nowadays.
Yeah.
There's no other way.
No. And it's
Yeah.
it's a weird translation into master data. How can you be resilient? Well, again, translate it to the digital twin of the real world, right? We see it now that people have stocked up on various products, on various services, and various agreements. So we call it supply chain constipation. So right now, people are waiting. What happens? Well, the problem is if you don't do anything, nothing happens. Isn't that fantastic? The problem is if everybody's doing that, not only the product and service flow stops, the money flows stop as well. That is a huge danger I'm seeing right now. If we don't start to actually do something, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy that nobody can do anything. Nobody can invest in new machinery. Nobody can invest in new market launches or new products. So, and it's kind of a shaky time right now. So I think this is the moment of actually investing in looking at your master data while you have a chance to breathe and actually think strategically. This is the time, because I would say most of our customers saying sort of mid 2025, things will hopefully start to move in the right direction again. So we get more normal circumstances in the markets. But I think the world has changed permanently. It is not the way it's been before. So why is
Yeah,
then?
yeah, and it will never be. I mean, it's 5 years already almost that we have seen things changing so fast, and disruption, and as well as new technology and all of that. And to all of this, master data is very connected, and it needs to adapt to these rapid changes by kind of dusting, removing a little bit of the dust from the view.
With a broom,
Yeah,
bigger
yeah,
broom. Yeah.
indeed. And I'm wondering, when you're going into organizations and talk in this manner, who is the most receptive to this change in mindset? Who is the person that usually takes the initiative and says, okay, we got to do something here. We cannot stay stuck and start rusting. What do you
Well,
think?
I think master data managers and data management is always keen to learn more, but they're also the ones struggling the most uphill battles, unfortunately. Um, they don't get the ears and eyes of the management. So I think it's a duality of having the bottom up approach where people sitting with the responsibility with the problems can, really spell out, we can't get the data because X, Y, Z. So if
Yeah.
we can take that to management and say, guys, your setup is simply wrong. Your business units are not connected. You can't report cross-functional. You can't report on your countries. Then suddenly we have something specific to go with to management with. But again, management thinks in a completely different way. So I think we have the benefit of looking at it both ways. So we have an extremely commercial mindset when it comes to master data, and also semi-provocative, right? If you don't get any value out of this, why the hell should we maintain it, right? So because that's what the business users think, and that's
Yeah.
usually where the disconnect of ownership is. So we need to have the top-down engagement as well to say, well, if we get more transparency, we become more efficient. There was a new release of productivity numbers across Europe versus the US. I think US had a productivity rise of 8.4% over the last years. Europe, 0.2. So there is again maybe thinking bigger can actually drive productivity, because if you don't do something, somebody else will. Yeah, and most of you guys are in global competition, right? We are in global positioning in the marketplaces. And I think this is kind of my favorite saying now. The world has completely changed. How come your master data hasn't?
Yes, and it is one of the reasons why I asked you the question about who is more receptive, because not everyone, and not every person in data is like that, but there is a tendency sometimes to kind of sit on the established rule of how things should go, the software that should be, and everything else. And there are so many other people in the organization. Of course, it's a generalization here, but there are many people in the organization, whether it's marketing, whether it's sales, whether it's the business executives, that instead have a tendency to have like they have a position that naturally gives them a faster way of approaching things,
Yeah,
right? Or an ability to pitch better. So, and there needs to be a lot of communication and pitching when it comes to presenting the value of data and understanding why we should do some things in a way rather than the other. And the pitch shouldn't be technical. So that's why I was asking you this question, because I think yes, it needs to involve the master data managers, but it needs all the help it can get from people that know how to push, know how to pitch, and know how to make an argument that will be followed by the rest of the organization.
yeah,
That's how we also get the connected organism, isn't it?
it is. And I think just one concrete example as well, where with one client we have a product hierarchy, right? So what we've simply done is link the different suppliers we have for
Yeah.
either supplying bill of material, spare parts, or whatever for that product hierarchy, and suddenly we can see not only one or two alternative suppliers, but maybe three or four, and we link those suppliers to countries as well. So because we have that connectivity between those objects, we can follow the breadcrumb, we can follow the trail of saying, well, who do we actually have in India? Who do we have in China? Who do we have in the US? Who do we have in Europe of suppliers within certain categories? And then because we link those together, we can start managing lead times, we can start seeing price increases, etc. So it allows us to make informed decisions. And that's
Yeah.
again the combination of master data and transactional data, where there's a huge difference in the way that people see that setup. But
Yeah.
that's one concrete example of making things more transparent and making informed decisions. You can actually use your master data to making those decisions.
Yeah. There's a comment here. There's a question here from Dylan. Why do you think there is such a massive gap in those productivity rise between US and Europe?
I think again, it's a mindset. I don't think the US has the same limitations as we do in Europe. And again, that's also why I'm traveling to the US now. It seems like Europe is sleeping right now. So it's the best decision, or the easiest decision is not making a decision, right? Because
Yeah.
you can't get your ass whooped if you don't make a decision, right? But it's like the frog in slowly boiling water, right? Suddenly we find out, oh shit, it's too late. We are in boiling water, but you need to act proactively, and I think that's
Yeah.
why there's such a big difference between the productivity in the US and Europe. There's no limitations. There's no demanding mindset. So I think we need that bit of a radical mindset and just do it instead of the Nike expression. Just do it instead of thinking about it. And I think to bridge that gap, we've had that in another session, right? Is rapid prototyping. Try and build it up. What can happen? Nothing. So just start the work and start engagement with the key stakeholders in the organization. Because as I say, it's survival of the most adaptable, not the fittest.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. There is a difference in mentality there. There is a perception that if you just do nothing and sit on your old glory and history, something good is going to happen, but it's not. And I don't
Yeah.
understand sincerely why this is not changing yet. Another point that could be made is that Europe has more strict regulations when it comes to, I don't know, either work or regulations related to sustainability, GDPR. Basically, organizations stumble upon many limitations. What do you think about that? And do you think that master data could enable organizations to maintain agility and productivity despite these obstacles?
Well, it's a good point. I agree that there's tons of regulations. Right now, we have to register time for all employees, right, due to the European Union. another burden when it comes to administration. But the problem is we also like solving problems. So the
Yeah.
more problems we're presented with, the more we take up our time of solving them. But if we had control in the first place, we didn't need to do all this reporting because we had it in control in the first place, right? So,
Oh
so,
yeah.
so, as I say, it kind of becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because if we wait, somebody else will dictate the way we need to
Yeah.
operate.
Yeah, it's a little bit like when you have the data to see things. It's like having glasses and seeing obstacles from further away
Yeah,
versus encountering them, stumbling about them upon them, falling down, and having to pick yourself up. So I think it's still. I mean, yes, regulations might constitute something that can slow down some organization in some fields. There is a reason for them, whatever is the opinion, whether it's they should be there or not. But still, data is master data, and a connected approach to it will help approaching them in the best possible way.
yeah. And you need to take the long haul. You need to have and if you don't have a vision, if you don't have a strategy behind it, that is being backed up by senior management, even the board. Sometimes we have to go to get backup because it is ambitious. It is a new way of thinking. But as I said, you're in so much competition with competitors out there, changes in the market. Suddenly, there's subsidiaries of certain areas that you can't compete with. So your customers buy your brand, they buy your products, your services,
Yeah.
because they're good, they're available, they fit to what they need. And as long as you're in touch with the customers, that's not a problem. But it has to be that commercial mindset on master data. Master data is driving your business. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. There's some comment here. Why classification, product hierarchy, and categorization of master is such a massive improvement? How to make the management aware of this and initiate discussions in an organization?
Yeah, translation. Right. So we know what categorization is. So I think it's a matter of taking master data, product hierarchies, and classification, translating it to something that is different to management. So it is around customer segmentation, for example. Well, if we get control of our product hierarchies, our classifications, then we can do customer segmentation.
Yeah.
So start with the customer segmentation to say, guys, we need to sell better into our markets. We need to sell bigger into this customer segment one, segment two, etc. Don't tell the rest. That's just details needs to happen in order for them to reach their business goals. So start with the business goal and then say, in order to do that, we need to reorganize. We need to think differently in the way we segment our products, the way we go to market with our new product launches or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's the way to engage management in those discussions in the organization,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and avoid the details.
Yeah.
If you don't agree on the bigger lines, the details are completely irrelevant.
I agree. I agree. Well, Brian, whenever I talk to you, I lose track of time.
Yes.
But we're coming close to the end of the session, and I think it's a good time to talk about the Data Management Think Club, the 10th Data Management Think Club. We'll be meeting very soon in October, on the 23rd. Can you give us a bit of a sneak peek about what you're going to talk about, the topics, and tell us a little bit more?
Sure. So we have been talking about data mindset. We have been talking about AI. We have been talking about rapid prototyping. So all of this will kind of come together at the Think Lab in October, where we have a real customer case with us. Can't say the name now, but I can in Prague. So it's a very specific case around how we managed to get this mindset installed in an organization. How we did, a 3-month analysis of looking at the whole value chain, speaking of, and actually identifying opportunities for the business, but also for IT to have better architecture, better use of CRM systems, etc. And how we then put that into a roadmap, and actually already within 5 months have solved critical issues when it comes to data quality and governance, AI and translations, and then also the syndication of selling to a dealership market across the world with more than 1,300 direct customers and resellers of this particular customer products.
Yeah, that's how it should be. Quick wins.
Yeah. Very ambitious, but again, that was the first part of the journey, right? But you have to bite the elephant into smaller bits, otherwise you can't do it. And
yeah, absolutely. Otherwise, see you in 10 years, and whoever remembers about what happened and why did we start this thing to begin with.
Yeah.
No, I agree with you. I'm looking forward to hearing about that, and the exclusivity part of it is also quite tempting for anyone watching the event, watching this session, who hasn't bought the ticket yet. So in case you haven't, and and on the 23rd, 24th, and 25th of October, you can make it to Prague. There is plenty of amazing speakers, thought leaders, practitioners, Brian, that will present topics on crucial data management topics, always, of course, with the connection to business outcomes, right? Because we want to talk about things in a manner that once we're done, you can take them back home and apply them to your organization, or present them in your organization in a way that is appealing not only to the data team, but to the rest as well. So if you haven't already, definitely have a look. Write to Natalia, here she is, Natalia, see you in Prague soon. And I look forward to seeing you there. If people, let's say, people want to find out more about you, Brian, or want to talk to you, ask you some questions that they didn't manage to ask you today, what's the best way to do so?
Well, you're on LinkedIn now, so feel free to send an invite and a few comments on what your challenge is or what you want to talk about. Alternatively, send me an email on brth@astrocetia.com or connect@astrocetia.com. Happy to continue the dialogue, and again, love sharing ideas, and I think that what I love now is that we can kind of decode almost any situation or business and come up with suggestions extremely quickly on how you can move forward with your MDM program. So really happy to connect. Feel free to email or hook up on LinkedIn, and happy to continue the conversation.
Fantastic. Any last words that you would like to leave our viewers with? Any tips for any data management and MDM professionals?
No, I think it goes back to the statement I came up with before, right? That the world has changed. Why hasn't your master data? And I think that's the most important takeaway here, that it needs to happen, and it needs to happen now. I think when you get the right messaging across, you can really start your program. You can really start to move and build up the organization that is needed to help you help the business.
Fantastic. Perfect way to close. Brian, I want to thank you today. I want to thank everyone in the audience. Of course, ladies and gentlemen, go follow Brian and connect with him. And I wish you all a wonderful continuation of the day. Thank you again.
See you guys.